So I'd like to first set up the framework for doing some basic HTML, JavaScript stuff by just getting a good clean start. So I want to show you how we're going to do that, and if you're following along, the goal here is to actually read off a text file to generate a dynamic menu. But you don't want to try to do that until you've got what I have in place. So I just want to give you a quick tour of that, and then we'll pick up maybe on the next step. So here's a web page, di.vonbriesen.people.cbcc.edu, web 215, home.htm. You see it's got a title. It says dynamic menu from text with JS, and I've broken it into some sections. You know, this would be a header, this would be a menu, this would be a main, this would be a footer, and then you can't see where the main stuff will go. And I'll show you that HTML. The HTML looks basically like this, and I've got everything required to get the page to validate, including my validation buttons, and I also have some comments here that just break the area up. And we're using a couple external files. One of them is a JavaScript file, and one of them is a style sheet. So, and then of course on the page itself, you see these validation buttons, right? So if we look at the folder of files, actually I think I've already got that open. You'll see we have a styles folder, a scripts folder, and an images folder. In the images folder, we have those two validation buttons, good meaningful names. We have in the scripts a script folder called menu loader, and in the styles, we have a style called dynamic menu style.css. So just from the get-go, we have an HTML file, we have a style sheet, we have a script, we have two images, and we have the requisite folders for those, and we'll refer to this as root for this site. I have some other stuff I was working on, don't worry about it. So you need to get yourself a page set up, something you can work with. And then also in the HTML, I have basically, I'm using the header tag, and I've given it the ID of header and the class of header, and I made a div with the ID menu and class of menu, and main with the ID of main and class of main. It may be redundant, probably is. And the footer with the ID of footer and the class of footer. Just so that if I come back and want to style it or use JavaScript or something, I can. So the next step is to make sure we can actually run a script. You saw that the document was applying these styles, teal and silver, and that the images are showing up. So we know that the mapping to these folders is right, but we want to test the scripts as well. So if you look at the script, I've got a couple things going on. I have an alert that just pops up and it says yo outside function. I have another call that says document.onload equals another function, and that should finish with a semicolon. And then I here have defined two functions. One is function another function, and all it does is alert, says in another function on load, just so I know what's up. I could also write to the console. Then I've got one called test function, which says yo inside function. I should clarify by changing that to say inside test function. And then another one called function my function, which takes some arguments, and this I swipe directly from W3 Schools. So all of these are just to make sure things are running properly. Make sure I save it, and I'll show you in the HTML code where those are. So at the top, I have a script tag which uses the source of that file. So it goes to the scripts folder and it loads the menuloader.js. So that basically brings all that content in. And down here in the header, we have an H3 that says click me to run a test function, and it has an on-click event that calls test function. Now you remember that test function just comes up and says yo inside test function. These two lines will run by themselves as soon as they're loaded. So the first thing we should expect to see is yo outside function. Then we should expect to see the call to another function, which is this one that says in another function. And then we can test out these other two, which are both with onClick. This onClicks click me to run a test function, and this one should actually change the text red. So all this is just to make sure we've got our files loading and showing up properly. Tidy this up a bit. So we'll save one more time, we'll go back to it, and in fact what I'll do is I'll lower this down so we can kind of see things simultaneously. I'll go back there, and so reload the page, and I get yo outside function, so it runs this code. I hit OK, then it says in another function, so it runs this code, which goes down, calls this function, which just does another alert. Okay, and then we click this, and it says yo inside test function, so it's running that text. And then we click this, and it turns red, because when we clicked it, it gave it this, which is information about itself, in other words, the paragraph that I clicked, and it passed it the word red, and then menu letter took that color and assigned it. So I should be able to go back and, for example, change this to be orange, save it, reload the page, get the same messages, click it, and now I get orange. So now we have the whole framework set up, and that's something that you should do really before you get started with anything else. The reason this is so important is that if you come back, for example, and we validate and we fail, oh, look, there we have a fail. We can't put a heading in a heading. If you get that kind of error, which is an easy fix, or you find that your script won't run because you have a typo in the path, or you've got the sequence wrong, you'll think that you're debugging what you're working on, but in reality you're debugging the foundational elements. So get your page straight, get it clean, make sure your styles are linked, make sure your images show up, make sure your pages validate, and then you can work on more complicated things. Meanwhile, also get to know the console. In this case, I've got the console open, so I can look at errors. This error relates to a Chrome plugin, but I found that I had misdefined a function, and it was useful. I just have that off screen. So I will go ahead and fix that validation right now. So I can go back, and you cannot have a heading inside another heading. So one thing I could do with this one is just make it a, it's kind of lame to make it a div, but we'll just keep it simple. Actually, you know what? I'll just make it an H3 and put it under the other one. This is just so that there's something to play with initially. And same goes with the paragraph. So the H2 starts there, and looks like I closed it in a totally wrong place. And I don't need these script tags because I moved my script to an external file. So that should be a little bit cleaner. I will save, taking its time. Back, refresh, and make sure it still works, that still works, and that still works, and I still have an issue. Line 14, on-click test function, stray end tag. I wonder if it didn't save my changes, because I'm pretty sure I fixed those. Oh yeah, you can't, I meant to put that H2 of course after there. So it's very easy to get sloppy. And in a perfect world, we also continue to format as we go, and we even align our tags vertically and nest our content, and that's the perfect world. In reality, it's hard to keep up those good habits. So hopefully that's a little bit cleaner. Now I can clearly see H2, H3, and paragraph, followed by a horizontal rule, and go back around. I'll recheck my validation, and now I'm good. So that's the starting page. For the next sequence in this exercise, I'll start a new recording using this as a foundation. So make sure you have your page, you have your colors, you have your link style sheets, you have your images, you have your validating code, you have a linked JavaScript that actually works, and then we'll go from there.